Great. So, all right, now we're recording. So, welcome, formally welcome to our second New England Poetry Club member celebration. We had the first one of these, I think, back last April. People had a really good time, and as is the case for what we're doing today, when we put out the call for readers, more people, responded than we had room for. So a lot of folks who are here now were carried over from the spring call, and similarly for this, we put out another call for people, and now we've got the beginning of a roster for the next one that we do sometime later in 2024. We don't know when yet, but I'm sure there'll be another one. So we have signed up 25 readers. It was originally 26, now it's 25. Not everyone is here yet, and as I was just saying a moment ago, it's possible that some folks may not be able to come in, largely due to weather and connectivity. I mean, that could be a good reason, or a bad reason, but at least a reason for it. So the way this will go is very simple. I'll call the next person to read. I'll also say who's on deck. So, oh yes, Thomas is saying everyone should mute, and I thank you. I was going to mention that, and I'll mention that in just a sec, although it's true. So I'll call your name, and I'll call the next person's name, and so you know who's up. I have asked, as I think everyone knows, for 3 minutes, including your introductions, please. That's just so that everyone gets equal time and attention. It seems to work out pretty well. And yes, if you are not speaking, please do mute yourself, your microphone. I think we all know by now it's almost 4 years into Zoom poetry readings. It's getting close, and someone can be yelling in the next room. Electronic feedback happens. There's all kinds of mishaps that get in the way of our being able to focus on who's reading at the moment. So please do that. All right. I think that's enough intro from me. So we'll begin with Richard Foerster. It's our first poet. And after Richard is Gail Thomas. So, Richard.
Hello, all. Happy New Year. I'm zooming in from Eliot, Maine. I have a new collection out from Littoral Books titled With Little Light and Sometimes None at All. And I'm going to read the opening poem, which introduces the primary theme of the book. It's called Aspens. Last night, the fool in me waking, as if half drunk, wanted to dance when the wind came up, insistent as surf, and lofted my bedroom window shears like veils about my shoulders. A wish, a whoosh, a clacking like castanets moved through the limbs of the aspens that border my lawn, had set them dervishing, the whole congregation moonlit, on tiptoes, as if in frenzied praise of a god made manifest, riding on a sweep of wind. And I felt certain the aspens would endure again the quaking current of that ecstasy. In light, it's hard not to believe optimism is just stubborn pretense. This morning, three trees lay felled, the roots exposed like hacked bones in open graves. I've stood before in the stillness of afterstorm, the everywhereness of it, among litter strewn from far corners of my brain, the stutter and static of news, brittling green torn from cliches of hope and tides of war and brewing storm, and stared into a wreckage of words left abandoned on the page, as if I'd never been that god of weather. And so I wield again the grumbling bite of a chainsaw. I'll make neat chords of nuisance. I'll hitch the stumps to a trunk and yank them out, easy as teeth, easy as taking a rake to smooth over what's past, tamp it flat with my muck boots, in a foolish dance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. Well, Gail Thomas is next, and following Gail is Daniel Speers.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. I'm going to be reading the title poem from my newest book, which is called Leaving Paradise from Human Error Publishing. I spent my youth in Pennsylvania, and this poem will make that evident. It's also a nod to Eve. Leaving Paradise, 1980. It wasn't the ring-necked pheasants strutting across the yard, lumbering groundhogs or deer splayed bloody next to every road that told me it was time to leave. Sprawled on Hawk Mountain boulders, I counted kestrels above dry quilts of corn, spread next to brick hotels, general stores, stone farmhouses, red barns with hearts and horses. I played ring toss in every country bar, lined with jars of pickled eggs and jerky, shopped farmers' market stalls tended by pink-cheeked Amish girls in white aprons, hair pulled tight and braided under cap buns. They sold stacks of scrapple and cheese, apple butter, pretzels, and pig stomach, while horse-drawn wagons waited for bearded men and black-brimmed boys to drive them home to paradise, Virginville, intercourse, bed sheets flapping in the manure-rich air. Inside my thick-walled house, beams stained with oxblood, tradition echoed in redware pottery, pierced tin cupboards, blue and white crocks with stiff-necked, plump Dutch birds. But there were no women like me. Lured down highways splattered with billboards, past the sprawl of malls and smokestacks, I searched for them in bookstores and meetings, women who lived in disguise, a man's wife kissing another man's wife. Let me be clear about this yearning. Its embers stoked by more than a juicy bite, more than feminist books devoured like bread, more than the company of other mothers alone at night, their men working late. Body and mind yoked to this cultivated garden of my own sowing, I chose wilderness. When I packed up my babies to leave, fear came too, but I was never kicked out.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you very much. By the way, when we get to the end, I'll ask everyone to, unmute if you choose to, and then we can all make riotous simultaneous sound. So Daniel Speers is next, and following Daniel is Peter Desmond.
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Speers from Merrimack Valley, Haverhill, and I'm going to address the issue that every poet, I think, feels. Will our poetry survive us? Will people read it long after we're gone? And this is called The Poet's Lament. Is there anyone listening? Asked the poet, rhythmically reading words neath a candle flame, stuttering on the lines and rhymes his passions preferred. The cat on the mantel twisted an ear and twitched a whisker white, and the lonely poet cried out again a second time, will no one hear the words I write? But there came no response to the poet's plea, no face from the dark shadows that dwell within a poet's lonely soul appeared with comfort to bestow. Still he knew they were there, the keepers of his fears, those doubts and insecurity that lurks within a poet's mind for years with no sense of priorities. Yet he felt in his heart they were wrong, that he was a poet of merit, and the silence of his fears, his time of stress, would squelch the ire of every critic. Abruptly he slammed his fist upon his desk, face of red, eyes filled with fire. Tell them I wrote this poem for one and all the world to embrace and inspire. Not a whisper of dissent filled the still, stale air. Though his voice was loud and clear, and every word he spoke echoed in the night, from the poet whose poems were dear. Yes, they heard the scratch of pen on paper, the sips of wine when nights grew long, and how the poem strove softly onward, though the poet was dead and gone. And since I've got a minute left, I'll do a short one. It's called The Bond. I saw a bird fly from a tree. It was engaging the earth, the sky, and me, soaring toward twilight sleepily, drifting to night where dreams come drawn, imagining I sensed a bond, embracing us from dusk to dawn. I saw a spring seeking the sea, from creek to stream, rollicking free, nursed a river conveying me from mountaintops through clouds that soar down to valleys and valley floors, cuddling flowers, marsh reeds, and shore. The way the day trusted the night to rebirth and obey delight, I knew I too would see dawn's light, and that I once more would be me. I saw a bird fly from a tree, and I recall a memory. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dan, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, so Peter Desmond is next, and after Peter, Molly Akin.
Hi. I live in Cambridge, though in 2001, when the Twin Towers fell, I spent hours every day reading the New York Times. One question was, where in Asia would the United States send its armed forces? Within weeks, several articles had mentioned Uzbekistan. I wrote this. Good morning, Uzbekistan. It's great to be here. We'll name our new military airport after your most famous son, the great mathematician Muhammad al-Khwarizmi, who lived in the 9th century of the Christian era. Sorry, the Common Era. We'll build Firebase algorithm, a word derived from his last name. The book he wrote, Kitab al-Jabr, christened the field of algebra. Whoops, we should have said al-Jabr was the basis. We'll add a lot more bases. Your social problems might multiply as we search for X, then Y, then Z, the unknown quantities, the solutions to our problems. But we're grateful for your support, glad that al-Khwarizmi developed the calculus of two errors. It will help us differentiate terror from infinite justice. Make that enduring freedom. We give thanks that al-Khwarizmi launched the decimal system so we can keep our easy body counts, flash results on television, and when the great game ends, post the scores in Arabic numerals. Muslims, 0. Christians, 0. Civilization, 0. Thank you.
The lesson in, I'm losing the word, doesn't matter. Thank you, Peter. A lesson that to be relearned every time. Next is Molly Akin, and after Molly, D Finley.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here to read and to listen. I'm joining from Falmouth on the Cape. I have 3 short poems that represent 3 different modes I'm currently exploring. House Spider. Now we know spiders dream. When spiders dream, reality collapses into threads. Now we know. Flicks indicate arachnid fantasy of 2 legs. What would I dream of? Hanging upside in a corner, hoping to draw into the dark. We could meet there, a dangling, all looking for a thread to wind around. Around here. A woman yelled, "You're not from around here," hurrying across for a closer look. No lady wears all black here. I am no longer from around here. I come from these hills, ma'am. I drive past highway signs pointing my past. I come from the sea, ma'am. Taking country road home to ocean surge. Not from here, really, but too far gone from prairie. I come from the road, ma'am. Flat road follow, Cooper County on down, Buchanan on down, Kansas City back from Boston, on down St. Joe, up coast, down Cape. I come from, ma'am. Let my accent drip. Tanya will set me back to where I come. River bottom. My grandmother is a river bottom woman, soft breasts and wide skirts, smelling of silt and sun. I remember my grandmother like the alchemy of the Gulf, the Missouri and the Mississippi pouring her life into mine. Because my mother drew from dry wells, it is my father's mother who teaches me to trace a path in water. Where muddy waters spill into lightly salted ocean, our 2 stories converge, both gone young from home. My grandmother and her quilt, hand sewn by her mother, who poured her body into scraps of fabric. I keep her quilt on my bedroom chair, each piece careworn, passed from hand to hand until its star pattern mirrored the sky. I dream of my grandmother and the keening cry of a bird, growing louder until it bursts, washing us in waters no dam can hold. We carry our sorrows in these fragile vessels, between wide hips and river-soaked clothes. My grandmother taught me to become a river. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molly. CD Finley is up next, and after CD is Peter Crowley.
Hi, and thank you. So good to see everyone. I have a poem that was published in Willowa Journal out in Oregon, and it's called Falling Off Horses. I wouldn't want my falling off a horse laid right next to my first good kiss. Or my wedding day when my then husband went off to smoke dope with his chums for 20 minutes, laid next to my first prize in photography. And I wouldn't like the memory of me saying, "I'm dying to see you," said to my dad the day before he actually did die. Laid next to my mother's asking me at 15 if I'd taken her birth control pills. Me looking at her like she was nuts, which apparently she was. It's spaces between things that help us retain sanity, a modicum of space, holding it all in a closet of sorts. Here's the thing, I want to put that closet somewhere closed, maybe give it a combination lock or bury it deeper, or somehow get it to stop swinging open randomly with the scent of marigold, or how the ocean sounds at 7 a.m., or the way at the beginning of snow, there's a hush. And then it begins one single soft flake at a time. Thank you.
Oh, Finn, thank you very much. Thank you so much. So Peter Crowley is next, and then after Peter is Madeleine Holzer.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm from Melrose, and I think I'll recognize what this poem's about. It's called This Is Not a War. Children, swimming in crashing loamy waves, blowing out birthday candles, riding Ferris wheels. They are not your own. Children, smiling at reporters' cameras, trudging through safe corridors southerly, without amnesia for leg amputation. They're not your tribes. Children, trapped under bombed out building rubble, forcibly moved from hospitals, alone, entire family taken by missile. They're not of your ilk. Children, without food, without hospital, without water, they're not pale. Children, without incubator, without parents, with nothing in the world but more of your bombs. Are they not human? This is not a war. It's a massacre of the innocent. And I'll read a quick one from my book that was published back in October called Empire's End. This is the name of the poem is called There Has to Be a Better Way to Die. Silver cells abound in glistening field. The body turns, a whooping crane listens. Fish beneath the shadowed surface dart in Caesar spasms. The crane's beak jabs into the water, lacerating gills. Hairless, mouth ajar, dark circles underneath the eyes, stomach in rebellion, T-cells on strike. There has to be a better way to die. Listless pallor, eyes fluttering, hallucinating, blind, cancer in recession. It doesn't matter anymore. There has to be a better way to die. Feeding tubes, morphine, high fever, delirium, tired like Vishnu, imbibing all the world's suffering. There has to be a better way to die. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks very much. So Madeleine Holzer is next, and after her is Jay Cates. You're still muted, Madeleine.
Oh, here we are. There, I got it. Okay. Thank you, David. And I want to thank everyone for their poetry and that I've heard already, and for the poetry that's yet to come. I'm delighted to be with all of you. Since it's snowing and I knew it was going to snow, I picked a couple of winter poems, although the first two are not from here, but from Western Massachusetts on a lake. Winter Birds, December 2021. White scratches hide frozen currents. Dried leaves like small birds skitter across thin ice. When landing, Canada geese use webbed feet as skis. They do not care if they fall in. The water is warmer. Then the crested black head, white face, ladder striped back, hooded merganser, uncommon. On the other side of the country, my son photographs eagles, heron, hooded mergansers. Will he ever again fly here to winter? This one is called Ice Fisherman. They trudge across fields, pull, pack sleds to a frozen lake dotted with puddles, then zig and zag to find firm ice, sit on boxes, sink holes, stand, lift one arm to pull a line, shuffle through water, lift another arm, sit. Puddles deepen, begin to show ripples, and sun streaks the lake. They stay in the middle on thinning ice, under an orange-pink sky, silenced by the untamed wind. No winter birds chirp. This one was partially written a long time ago, and I very recently changed it at 75. You notice snow falling through hemlock, how it glazes feathery edges. You see the brook lace its way through dried leaves, see oval red berries, thorn bush alongside. You think of what you have but cannot hold. Ice glazed edges, rushing water, these berries hidden by thorns. Breath leaves your chest in damp cold. Its mist swirls, vanishes. And last, another short one. This one's just because I like trees. It's not about winter. Slant. There's something about light on trees, not full tilt at noon, but early morning and just before dusk, when sun is diagonal to this part of earth, the way light hits slanted, colored, highlighting parts you wouldn't notice, ripples in bark, backside of trunk, the fragile skin of small branches. And they're not lit white like the rest of the world, but peach or golden, warm colors that make you want to hug them. Hang on till you know the secret, the slant underlit side. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. Next is Jay Cates, and because I've looked and I do not see Jane Rothwell here, so following after that, Ruth Hoberman, you're on deck after Jay Cates, so please go ahead.
Doing the worm's work. The 1st April, I am certain I will die. The ground too cold, too wet for planting. The river only a foot down from flood. The compost heap a contradance of bees. I need to be looking toward a harvest. I will turn dirt. Without stooping to pick rocks, I do the worm's work for an hour or two. See how I like it. See how I enjoy the company of worms. Not bad, they say. Not bad for a beginner. The next poem has an epigraph from a manifesto of introspectivism by the Yiddish poet Jacob Gladstein in 1919, translated by Richard Fine, who I think is a member of the New England Poetry Club. And the epigraph goes, a Jewish poet will be Jewish when he writes poetry about the golden calf, about roses that turn black, about a courier of an old prince, or about the calm that comes only with sleep. A Jewish poet. A Jewish poet will be Jewish when he writes about the golden calf, when she writes about the ashes at Auschwitz, when they write about Ukrainians digging trenches in what is barely remembered as a graveyard outside Kiev. A Jewish poet will be Jewish when we write about children bombed into and out of orphanages and hospitals, tunneled under and wept over, orchards uprooted, peacemakers and warmongers among the slaughtered, imaginary lines failing to divide the imprisoned from the captive. When we write about our own historical wrongs, and yes, Palestinian rights, we will be Jewish. When we write about a courier falling at the feet of an old prince saying, may all your enemies and those who rise against you be as that young man is, And when we write about how the king lamented that loss, would God I had died for thee, we will be Jewish. When roses turn black, a Jewish poet will be Jewish, longing in vain for the calm that comes only with sleep.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sorry. Well, okay, so pardon me, Ruth Hoberman is next, and following Ruth, we have Fred Gerhard after Ruth.
Okay, thank you, David, for organizing all of this. It's been wonderful hearing everyone. I'm going to read two poems. The first is called Toward a Poetics of Atrial Fibrillation. I don't know if any of you are familiar with atrial fibrillation. It's when your heart starts fluttering, and it's not good. The other thing I wanted to mention is that many of us, I think, were taught to think of iambic meter as natural to language because it matches our heartbeat, lub-dub, lub-dub. So after I recently had an episode of atrial fibrillation, I thought, my heart is not going lub-dub, lub-dub. So I wrote this poem, Toward a Poetics of Atrial Fibrillation. Listen to your heart lub-dub, the bearded professor said, who taught poetry and published his own with reputable presses. Iambic equals heartbeat, so blank verse throbs as naturally as your pulse. But dear Marianne Moore, like the heartless French, counted syllables instead of feet. Beats bludgeon, she said, bullies with batons. A Democrat among the phonemes, she gave each little sound its due, then broke her lines so syllables perched singly on their twigs and sang. Like the wrens in my heart fluttering, skilled in waver, wend, and shiver, not march or thud. Bards of lurch and giggle. Listen, please, my heart counts too. Aging, intractable, with its tremolo coo. This second poem is somewhat different. It's called Gleaners, and it deals with an ESL student I tutor, ESL being English as a second language. And gleaners, I'm sure you know, are people who collect what's left after the harvesters pass through a field. I love her openness, my ESL student who tells me about her Thanksgiving. We don't like turkey much, she says, apologetic. What can I tell her of this country she's in because her husband likes his job? Her son likes his friends and taekwondo, and they're looking for a house. We practice sentences. How far is the school from here? The supermarket? What are the neighbors like? I love her curiosity, her grappling with words. Lawyer, attorney, kayak, canoe. Why so many words that mean the same thing, she wonders. History, I tell her, thinking layers of victims, migrants, merchants, vandals, victors, pilgrims, massacres, smallpox, Squanto, enslaved. A bloodied, lavish, duplicitous language, stuffed as November lawn bags with leavings. So what do? We gleaners, with the blades buried there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ruth. Fred Gerhard is next, and following Fred is Gary Whitehead.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here. I have 3 short poems. They're actually currently on display on an exhibit of poems at the New Dawn Arts Gallery in Ashburnham, Massachusetts. And the theme for the poems there are all a long, dark winter. So the first one is Gray Hullabaloo. This was originally published in Otherwise Engaged Literature and Arts Journal. Gray sky, hullabaloo, like a lid on the afternoon, dim with thought I turn from the window, dingy-hearted, day bereft of hours. A heartbeat curled against chill. My joy is hibernating. My God is very still. The second one is Winter Love. It's a pleasant poem visually. Winter takes my hand by the bones, knows me deep, agreeing to one day keep me completely cold, in arms of turf and clay, promising me to stay, to always bite my face in kisses I can't refuse, or return, or turn away. And the last one is called Going On, originally published in Anti-Heroin Chic. Going on. Reality is snow in your collar, stinging of something you know, but forgot was going on. I'm going on. Are you? On the other side of snow, beyond the prickling sky, across the road, or like so many friends, quiet as snow, have you fallen for the cold? Here then is my small warmth just as real. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Fred. Okay, Gary Whitehead is next, and Gary is followed by Ralph Culver.
Thank you, David. Thanks to all of you. So good to be here. And I will read two pieces from my new book called Being There, important comma in there. And this includes poems of mine along with my translation of the ancient Greek fragments of Parmenides from the 5th century BCE. I'll first read just a passage from fragment 8 of Parmenides. Parmenides was very into exploration of the nature of being. So fragment 8 starts like this. And one utterance of the way still is left, that it is. Listen to this. On this way are very many signs that being is birthless and indestructible, for it is whole-limbed and unmoved and without end. Not ever was it, or will it be, since it is now, all at once, one continuous. And now my poem, which comes from where many of my poems come from, which is memories of growing up on a ranch in eastern Montana. This poem is called First Astonishments. I cannot name what carries itself in the curl of the pig's tails trembling as they arrive at the V-shaped feed trough when I come near, bucket full of ground oats heavy against one leg, bucket of kitchen slop splashes at the other. Oats first, slop on top. I listen close as their rubbery snouts plunge and snort into the feast. Up high, the soft, steady voice of wind sings above the slurping, presses its shoulder against the windmill's blades. The giant wheel turns in circles. Each time it goes round, its metal-to-metal squeak and grind carves the sky in half, pushes the wobbly wooden stick down into the well beneath the ground, then lifts up water. Each time it descends, the long stick bends so that I fear it will break in two, but it doesn't. I watch the clear water catch the light as it spills from the end of the iron pipe into the wooden tank, where stands our one Holstein, who gives us milk. In her slow cow way, she quietly lowers her dark nose and curved mouth into the glistening water, drinks the cool liqueur into her bony body, silent, but for the dim, throaty sounds her gullet makes as she swallows. Her tail swishes side to side, pushes away flies that feed on her rugged hide. I stand still as a stone, look for where it all begins or ends. My gaze travels from her tail to the pig's tails, back and forth, gathers in the wind, the windmill, the water, and morning's shimmering light, until the now silent Holsteins drunk her fill, and the pigs have slicked their trough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. So Ralph, Culver is next, and Ralph is followed by Rona, and I didn't ask pronunciation of your last name, Laban or Laban, but Rona is, you can correct me, Rona, when you begin to read. But anyway, Ralph is next.
Hey, everybody, it's great to be here. It's lovely to hear you all, and a very happy New Year to everyone. I'm zooming in from South Burlington, Vermont, where we have 4 or 5 inches of snow. I thought I'd read some poems that were just published in the High Window, which is a lovely journal that's out of England. Everything had to be invented. Everything had to be invented. Coffee, porch awnings, grieving, the fine golden hairs on your forearm, salmon. What was the order they arrived in, all of the things? No one knows. No one knows the order or what decreed them to be so. All we know is that there had to be things, and so they became. The things did not need names, it was thought, but words had been one of the inventions. What did the words do but have this insatiable need to attach to things? The words insatiable need, for example, assault weapon, dog collar, crescent moon. The fire burned brightly. A fire burned brightly as out of the fire another fire burned, giving birth to another fire, a small green fire that a child could hold in the palm of the hand. This fire fed on human grievances. It gave no heat. How long before it extinguishes itself? Tens of thousands of years? Perhaps never, for when is the end of human grievance? Animals and birds have been seen to shed tears in its light. It is good to come to the conclusion of one's life and realize that your grievances have been released. The panther weeping before the blaze. The Juniata's waters. The Juniata's waters are high, and the dog runs far ahead of us, clearly engaged in sniffing out the awakening groundhogs. Here's the first forsythia in full bloom I've seen this season. We each have a small umbrella to ward off the occasional raindrops that we can see making linked rings on the river's silken surface. As we walk, you put out your hand, and I take it in mine. I am about to say, I love you, when you point across the water, and I see the slow beating of a heron's wings, making for the opposite shore. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph.
David, you muted yourself accidentally.
You're right. Trigger finger, itchy finger. So thank you. Rona Laban is next, and then after her is Joyce Heon.
Thank you, David, for organizing and hosting this. It's Laban, unless I want to try to pass for French and use Laban. My father used to do that, but
I've decided to just do two kind of light poems because of the bleak winter day and the heaviness of these continued wars. So on a lighter note, this first one is called Muse on Vacation. And I hope I don't cough. Words won't come. She packed them all in a cute little Michael Kors knockoff bag between her bikini, sandals, and sunscreen. With no regard for me here, left to my own devices, forced to watch entire seasons of HBO TV series. I won't embarrass myself and say which one. With an occasional French subtitle thrown in, like Jules and Jim, to make me feel not so dumb. Seriously considering a classified. Poet seeks muse, tall, dark, and handsome, with a good job. So pathetic, left here pining, jealous of her down on the beach in Key West. Toes in sand, pina colada in hand, consorting with her new friends. Look at them with their beach books, bestsellers, thrillers, and their Kindles and iPad minis. Not one poetry book. The happy hours and tea parties will wear thin in another week or two when she realizes she's not needed and comes crawling back, I hope. And this next one is Never Date a Poet. Don't fall in love with a poet. She'll entice you, conjure you, cast her spells around you, make you love her beyond reason, but it won't be enough. She won't believe you. Excuse me. Don't date a poet. You will surely end up on a page, good, bad, and ugly. She'll put you there. Hero or villain, whether you send flowers or forget a birthday, you can't love a poet. Expectations high, self-esteem low. Never date a poet. She'll immortalize you in words and leave you on a page. She'll love you, then she'll lay you bare. She loves words more. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rona. Joyce Heon is next, and following Joyce is Elaine Reardon.
Hi, folks. I'm from North Central Massachusetts, and since I reached my 70s, I have been studying French with the object of writing poems in French. And what I discovered was that I would write them in French and English at the same time and switch back and forth from the languages so that they would give me different kinds of views in sound, which I very much enjoyed writing to. This particular poem that I'm going to read only in English is called Home, and it was published in a Monadnock anthology called The Mud Chronicles. And I have 50 other poems that I have done in this fashion. Home. At the kitchen table that night's dishes pushed aside, my father would assemble his last daily chore, the whetstone, the sickle, and the square of hide that protected his lap. And after his last sip of ale, negotiations were held between the gentle hollow in the stone and the sharp curve of the blade, deciding what each would yield to the other. My father's callous thumb, the arbitrator. In summer, his whispering stones sang me lullabies, and my eyes closed on a crisp dream of morning. My mother's hands, the left grasping bunches of witch grass, the right guiding the sickle, its practiced whoosh curving through the pasture's verge, as slickly careless as when she peeled apples. In June, it all seems easy. The basket full of green grass, lush and fragrant for the cow kept in the shed until she calves. My mother's hand strong and gentle, the obedient blade. 5 years is too young to learn the sharp truths, how your father can hone a scar that takes more than a lifetime to fade. And then in a more lighthearted vein, I'm going to read Mardi Gras. This was my younger daughter's favorite poem that I'd written, and she died back in 2020. Mardi Gras. Here come Fat Tuesday, wearing her sachet, twirling her beads, flashing a grin big as a fat-ass tuba. Here come Fat Tuesday, parading on a slide trombone, flirting with a clarinet, stomping to the drum, and winking at the pickpockets. Here come Fat Tuesday with confetti in her hair, and ain't that the devil on her arm, like a southern gentleman bowing, offering another bourbon and branch? Fat Tuesday got trouble down on the cobblestones and care flushed down a back alley, loneliness hosed down with laughter, and everybody getting down with the jazz. Fat Tuesday know us all. When winter hang too long, Fat Tuesday call. Come on out, bring me neon and glitter, light up the streets and party. Fat Tuesday say throw on a mask and strut some gaudy. Fat Tuesday putting that smile up to a trumpet and blowing Wednesday's ashes out of sight. Thank you.
Thanks for launching us into Mardi Gras early. That's great. Thank you, Joyce. Elaine Reardon, pardon me. Elaine Reardon is next, followed by José Edmundo Ocampo Reyes.
Thank you. I'm reading 2 poems that will be published in my next chapbook by Finishing Line Press late in the spring. They're Armenian poems. Morning stories. When I woke in the morning and begged for stories, Graham said, "Don't talk, lies will get in your mouth. After our work, I'll tell you a story." She tied an apron around me, pulled the stool to the table, gave me parsley, cracked wheat, brown lamb, a basin of water to wet my hands in. She said, "Knead so it's as soft as a baby's bottom. Shape small round balls." We poked our thumbs in to open them and spooned in stuffing. I still wanted a story. Graham said, "My Gram and I made kufta, and I carried lunch to my grandpa when he worked in the fields. Sometimes she rode a donkey, sometimes a horse." Graham said, "Never ride a horse or a camel," and we never did in our Boston neighborhood. I watched her story unfold in my mind, her final day home, when she and her sisters returned from school and found the family murdered, the locked church on fire. A silent village now, except for soldiers that gathered survivors. They walked from their mountain village, part of a desert death march, thirsty, eating grasses and weeds, anything they found. 2 sisters fell in the desert. 3 trudged on to Aleppo, and onward from there, survivors. The next poem is called Copper Jazva. It's what you make coffee in. This is a jazva. Graham read our coffee grounds only once, when my cousin and I were 15. She pulled out the jazva, brought the Turkish coffee grounds to a foaming boil 3 times, and poured our cups full. She had never been willing to tell our fortunes before. We added sugar and drank at the kitchen table in silence. Then we turned our cups over to rest on saucers. Coffee grounds dipped dripped their fortune-telling patterns down the china cups, and Graham began. She turned my cup over and paused. Surprised, she said, mountains. Then she saw a no-good boy, someone new in my life, not worth anything. I was sure she was in cahoots with my dad to keep me from dating. Jerry had begun to walk me home from school, and we had our first date. A week later, I found she was right about Jerry, and now I live halfway up a mountain. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. So next, José Edmundo Ocampo Reyes, followed by Thomas DeFreitas.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone. It's great to listen to all of you, and I'm glad to be here. I'm going to read two poems. The title of the first poem is a reference to an event that took place 125 years ago at the intersection of the Philippine Revolution, Spanish-American War, and Filipino-American War. Mock Battle of Manila, 1898. 1. Surrendering to a fellow power in lieu of losing face. Nunca a los diablos negros. 2. Single shots from 4 ships strike the empty fort's stone walls. Troops from 3 armies skirmish. A white flag flaps in the rain like chatter in a foreign language. 3. Any casualties due not to actors bungling their lines, as the historian claimed, but to marionettes getting entangled in the invisible strings. 4. 14 miles of trenches surrounding the walled city. To possess means to draw a boundary around the thing, to postulate that anyone else already on the inside can never enter. Critical race theory. To the threatened, a tetchy catch-all for heresy, retaliation for relocating core tenets. A retort. But chattel's obsolete, they cliché, unwitting, unwilling to heed relict helotry. They ratchet up heat, accroach sole right to teach by rote their white bleached yore. Loath to total lithic relics, they lash back. While they deify an elect coterie, we correct their heroic rhetoric, spilling what's tacit. Place story itself on trial, defying their durable writ of certiorari. Cash the unsettled note, perpetually in arrears, that, lethe drunk, they will not redeem. Clench, unclench our throats. Thank you.
Thank you, José. Thomas DeFreitas is next, followed by Gail Moran Slater.
Hello all. Thank you, New England Poetry Club, and thank you all for being here. My one poem is from my latest collection of poems, Swift River Ballad, published by Kelsey Books late last year, and the poem is called Elegy, in memory of Dolores O'Riordan. Dolores O'Riordan was an Irish pop singer, frontwoman of the 90s band The Cranberries. She died an alcoholic death at age 46 in 2018. Elegy. Every lost child weeps with Dolores, little girl prisoned in a world of winter, fragile doll body in a globe of snow. Glass, smithereens against slate gray rocks, she reels from injuries against which her angel did not protect her. Every living voice sings with Dolores, queen of Limerick, lady of sorrows, fierce as Freya when she's at the guitar, brave as St. Bridget, this whiskey soprano, this pint-sized fighter. Every parched spirit drinks with Dolores from a well of solace, from a lake of grace, pure as the first star kindled in Genesis, wide as the mantle of the sheltering Virgin. Every bright body dances with Dolores, whose exultant feet kiss wondering earth, who sways in the night, leans into the breeze, whose hymnody glimmers in ghostly moon glow, whose triumphs and tears are stored in a bottle, kept in a book. Peace and light all. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Thomas. Gail Moran Slater is next, and after Gail is Jim Zimmerman.
Good afternoon, everybody at the New England Poetry Club. And thank you, David, for doing everything that you do to bring us all together. My first poem is called Discarded Rhymes. Is there anything I shouldn't say? Well, just don't mention your politics. I cannot bring myself to lie. I offer to help with the dishes. Lots of smiles. Later on the train, you decline a segment of my orange. When I cannot find a trash can for the nest of the peels on my lap, you stuff them inside your jacket. At our stop, I walk lighter, knowing you have offered to carry my discarded rhymes. Discarded rhymes. That poem is not in the book that I published in March called At the Edge. It's on Amazon. This poem is called Proof of Life. It is in memory of my brother, Gus Moran, who died, passed away April 17th, 2023. Proof of Life. This is how I know I'm living. These small cuts on my hands, some infected from splinters and thorns, mean I've worked outdoors this week. The maddening purgatory of Bob Seger playing night moves nonstop in my head. This catch and release version of life, leaving people, being left. The sound of clothes going round and round in the dryer at the other end of the house. This is how I know I am living. My last poem is called Rented Rooms. You might like to check out some of these. Our rented flat on the Rue de Bastille the summer we turned 18. That skeletal cage-like elevator creeped us out for a week. And the year the gulls let out ha-ha-has below our Monterey balcony, the tide-swept sand remembering Steinbeck. Then there was that 44th Street lobby where wits from the long-ago 20s gathered over pre-show Manhattans while sidestepping one another's barbs. One year, we spent a night at the Palais Royal Hotel. From our windows, a topiary grand piano in the Louis XV courtyard amazed us while muzak permeated the restaurant. And during the week after the Berlin Wall fell, while we breakfasted on eggs and mustard sauce, the concierge was frisking the guests for revolvers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah. Jim Zimmerman is up next, and just following my list here, because I do not see Jennifer Phillips, and I have not seen Nina Rubenstein Alonso. After Jim will be Kelly DuMar.
Such a pleasure to join you all from down here in New York, where it rarely snows and where the Jets were leading. There's a sequence of two poems about my emotional struggles with the nature of a particularly very skillful feline. And a disclaimer that I actually do like cats. This first one is called La La La, The Life Goes On, with a nod to Lennon and McCartney. Between my clappered garage and the buzz-cut lawn next door, a house finch graces the fence, effusive song interweaving with tendrils of clematis rehearsing for their autumn debut. One of this year's squirrel crop dive bombs the bird feeder from a pine bough above like a cat, 4 paws extended earthward, chases the others in run-on sentences to keep the shaken loose sunflower seeds and millet for itself. A solo cardinal in mottled camo clutches a red maple branch calling, "Here, here," to reassure her scarlet mate their speckled eggs are safe. I sit on the back steps, mug of tea in hand, a thin scrim of tranquility settling into my spine, my breath, my eyes. After the neighbor's fat black cat crossed my path this morning, a dove's last flutter suspended from its teeth, gray feathers scattered on the grass. We all try our best to forget, but at dusk, a lone mourning dove will still be waiting on the ridgeline of the neighbor's house, cooing softly to herself, dressed in tan and gray and grief. And the second one is called The Dilemma Regarding the Murderous Black Cat. I know I should be tolerant of the black cat's claws, their stark precision as she leaps from the dark lattice of boxwood branches. But instead I imagine the arc of the rock I would hurl at her twitching tail. I know I should accept the piercing sharpness of teeth sunk into a nut-hashed neck, the heap of gray feathers she leaves behind like a poor man's gravesite. But I find myself conjuring a snare to hogtie her legs. I know I should admire the cool fire in her amber eyes as she proudly ambles off, the weight of a dove in her jaws slowing her pace. But I envision the unerring flight of an arrow. I know she's just doing her job in the ebb and flow, the inevitable interweave of life and death. But I relish the time she dropped a catbird in panic and ran to the copse of brambles across the street when I yelled, "What the fuck?" I was sure the limp gray bird was dead as he lay there, but he rose, shook cat spit off his wings, flitted to safety in the hemlock's nodding boughs, and sat practicing the sudden bark of my voice. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Kelly DuMar is next, and she is our penultimate poet. So I just love saying that word. Everyone loves saying penultimate. Try anti-penultimate. Jim Zimmerman would have been the anti-penultimate poet. But anyway, after Kelly, we'll conclude with Miriam O'Neal.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, New England Poetry. Even though I'm not in New England at this moment, I'm going to read a poem from Snow first, and 3 poems. A Symmetry, after Snowflakes, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. White on last night, ice plate of river, pristine. A sky fell, a truth tell. I tongued a feathered sixfold, pure, clear, I unsplit my syllables, pronounceable. Snow fell out of unremembering, grandfather, who hoarded me, harvest forsaken. Mouth now, flakeful. And this is Beach of Havar with Poe. We're swimming for shore from our anchored boat. Poe tells her dream of last night. Daughter's lush hair falls in a loose mess down her back. Poe gathers strands in her hands, tries to braid, but all the daughter hair slips through her fingers. Girls we birthed into women. On the sandless beach, we lie down, face up to the cirrus. Backs burn, ovals of limestone, clean as clouds, hot from noon sun. Who says we can't take it? Bed of stones over eons formed, we're a weight upon them. Poe puts a hot, flat, white one, big as her palm, on her bare sternum. I do the same. Burning our breastbones, stones over bones, lids, lips, upturned palms, pairs of our wombs. Our own mothers, where every cell of skin we're searing now began, are ripened, dried, and gone. Stones fall as we stand. And Hunter's Moon with grandson. You are breading skinless breasts, all things considered is on, children of war, numbering them. Tug of your shirt, a hushed voice, turn the volume down. I want to show you something. Everyone's hungry, your fingers are glopped with flour and egg. Dining rooms unlit, tables not set. It's a test. Your answer counts. He shows you a window. October is late. Ascending from evergreen tops, imprinted on dusk, a heroic globe of uncaptured light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. And well, I've been very patiently waiting. It's Miriam O'Neal, and she's our concluding poet. So Miriam. Still up there.
Hi, hello. Thank you, David. Thank you, New England Poetry Club. And thank you all wonderful readers. It was a joy. I've had the whole afternoon with snow falling and poetry. It's a pretty good deal. I'd like to read to you a longer poem from my book, From Nix's Mate, The Half Said Things, just came out last March of 22, actually. And seems like it was yesterday. This is called The Plan. The coffee shop shows up a lot in my poems, or used to. I don't go there anymore, but this one does. The Plan. So, if an angel walks into the coffee shop looking for me to share God's plan, I figure, because I'm me, I'll be busy reading or down back using the loo, and I'll miss the moment and have to carry on like always, with the cramped space between my dog and husband in bed and the stickiness of my students' boredom and or need will stay with me too. While the angel leaves right through the plate glass storefront, the way angels do, or uses the door for the novelty. But either way, my life will be like it's been, and I'll miss my chance to be a beacon or a green channel drum showing the way back into harbor, or one of the big red nuns 2 miles out that rolls on the swells in deep fog, tolling, 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 telling the ships that can only see each other as blips on radar, be careful, follow the chart, don't cheat. And I won't be able to bellow and bang over my brother's ashes where we sank them near the shipping channel 7 years ago. Won't be there to call out, hello, 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 say, we miss you. If only the angel would let me know she's coming and she has a plan in her pocket or under her tongue, like a piece of unchewed communion wafer, something I imagine angels are allowed to do without it being a sin. A plan as balanced as Titian's Venus of Urbino or Brunelleschi's Church or milkweed, once it's dried and burst, spilling silks and seeds. I'd be there. Excuse me. And because it was my late brother's birthday yesterday on the Feast of the Epiphany, and because he was the most Bostonian of all of us, one more poem. Accent. Someone complains outside of Mullen's bar in a voice that scours the ear of a voice that speaks ciggies and beers, like my brother Paco, 8 years in the Navy and 20 years down south, the flat A held. The G still dropped from every participle with that minor whine of 2 tight adenoids, as if each word were caught in a snare of bones. I didn't think I'd miss that sound, but its scrape against my cochlea calls up the glow of streetlights, shining down on small square roofs of telephone booths, where he stood talking to our mum from Saginaw or Rowley. And before that, how he hunched his shoulders, thumb out, trudging Route 3A at midnight, an hour's walk and 2 rides home, only cigarettes to warm him. Maybe the sound cuts deep because I saw him peel wet socks from swollen feet after the late shift, and sometimes heard the last gulp of beer come back up in protest, or because so often he slept, fully clothed in the den under an Afghan until noon, while we moved noisily around the kitchen. Maybe no one protected him because they didn't know they should, because a boy in a small town shouldn't need protection from bigger boys or poisonous men. Maybe because as a kid, he took hold of life with both hands, and at 60, every bone fissured by cancer, he refused to let life go. When I hear that accent, I remember what's been stirring up lately in dreams. He's telling me life's what I make it, grief or no grief. Thank you.
Miriam, thank you. And everybody, if you like to unmute, please feel free and, congratulate people audibly.
Many thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Beautiful.
Thank you to all of you.
Afternoon of poetry.
So many
Everyone,
wonderful
so great.
poems.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Dave.
Enjoyed you all.
Really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
so much, everybody.
Miriam,
you.
Miriam, I love that about the accent. It's
Thank
my-
you.
Yeah, I still use the broad A's, the aunt, can't, and
Fred,
I still use.
Fred, I wanted to ask you, are you from Ashburnham?
I am. Yeah,
You are. Well, I'm not far from you. I'm in Lunenburg.
that's near.
And my son-in-law, whose house I'm at right now, has relatives, and he is from Ashburnham.
Oh, great.
We'll
Well,
have to get in touch with each other.
that'd be lovely. We have a writers group that meets every Tuesday night, 7:00 at New Dawn.
Unfortunately, I can't get anywhere. I broke
Oh.
my shoulder.
Oh, sorry.
That's why I've been applauding like this. It's visual, but it
Well,
doesn't make a bit of sound.
Fred and Joyce, if you don't have each other's emails, I have both of your emails, so you can contact me.
Thank
about
you.
that. Yeah.
Anybody who wants to see the poem in French, if you send me your email, I will send the poem to you.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Zimmerman, yes, you unmute yourself and
Yes.
listen to me tell
What
you
did I do?
about my experience here in this household with a black sumo cat. Big, fat, and ugly disposition. He is a bully, and I can't find anything positive to say about him except he's got lots of fur.
Well, actually, the cat that I am writing about is quite beautiful and quite live. And that's the ambivalence about it that I was trying to express in the poem. I mean, I admire her, but she pisses me off because she eats my birds.
Well, I
And
admire him.
that's her job, you know.
I admire all black cats. There are 3 black and 1 charcoal gray here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the black cats I haven't seen once because it hides. And his brother is the one that is the sumo wrestler. And their brother is a lovely black cat.